Welcome to Advanced Nurses. We connect with nurses who inspire other nurses by sharing their experiences. And so we're able to bring that information to you.
Hi, I'm the educational consultant with Advanced Nurses at ACD4N, and today I am with Bree with We Rekrut Solutions.
Nursing was a degree that I got because I knew I'd always have a job. But the thing that I always ever wanted to do was write a book, write an article, do something. And so I've always tried to figure out a way, how can I tie in that to what I'm doing? Because that is a piece of me that always haunts me if I'm not doing it or incorporating it, even if, it's just for journaling for my own pleasure. It would be nice to implement that on a daily basis if I could in, the workplace, because it's who we are. So when I talk to nurses, I really try to tap into who they are and where they may see themselves. And sometimes even just an inkling of I think this is where I want to be or where I see myself. There's always something there. Even if you're not sure, there's always something there.
Even though in practice it appears that we're under medicine and we get direction from medicine, there is a thing called nursing knowledge. There is such a thing called nursing science, right? And so nurses know a lot more, right, than just the cookie cutter picture often painted in that clinical setting where you are working under a provider. And don't get me wrong, there's some nurses who that's exactly what their role is. They're working under a provider, they're working in a practice, or they're working in a hospital, and the provider gives them direction and they go ahead and move on that. And then there are nurses who in that same setting, they're using that information and they're applying that knowledge that they're getting from the provider and what they're also observing, and they're putting those ideas together, and in their minds they're processing ways to solve problems that are happening every day in front of them, where they are acting more so as a liaison between the patient and the provider, because now by the time the provider shows up, they've already completed a beautiful note narrating exactly what they observed in that patient encounter. That provider could just look at that note. They can know exactly who they're dealing with. They can go in and out and provide the care and move on to the next patient. And so those are stages of really understanding what you're doing as a nurse. So I don't think that that's something a nurse would just have walking, first day on the job. But over time, you will develop that. I think there is some good that comes out of a nurse, even if nursing was their second career. So if you did something first, maybe, I don't know, it could be anything. But when you go to nursing, as a second career, sometimes there's a benefit there, because then whatever that previous role is, you can kind of roll some of that into, especially if it's something that was writing intensive, or, that previous discipline. If it's writing intensive, you can really pull a lot of that into nursing as well. And it could help you even with a lot of those soft skills that nurses naturally, have to have in their roles. But there's some other ones that I think that sometimes people don't really think of, like creativity, for example. I don't even know if creativity be considered a soft skill, actually, because creativity is used in so much of what we call the harder sciences. I don't know if we could just, just a lot of things that maybe knowledge we may not necessarily attribute to nursing. We can see how they fit, into nursing, and it can be very helpful. I mean, think about somebody who's previously studied art and they're working at a children's hospital. They may have a way of approaching pain management with children very differently than somebody like myself who didn't study art. I may not be able to make those connections. And so that is very important as well. But I only went all the way over here on this tangent here just because that's just something I noticed that is a pattern, where nurses will just say, I'm a nurse. And I really want nurses to move towards really understanding that the dynamic nature of nursing is something that starts with you every single day, recognizing the talents and the skills that you bring to the table, and carving out a path for yourself and being comfortable with being the only sometimes. Because I think that's another thing too, because nursing is like its own little club to a certain degree. People think it's a one size fit all thing. All nurses don't wear scrubs. I haven't
Right.
worn a pair of scrubs in probably a decade. You know, and that's just it. All nurses don't wear scrubs, and and that doesn't mean that nurse who is wearing that scrub is any more or less intelligent than the nurse who's wearing a scrub, or
Correct.
I think that's something
Right.
too. So part of that branding piece, I think, is really nurses being okay with being smart, understanding that being smart is a part of nursing. There's nothing wrong with you wanting to do something more in nursing besides your traditional nursing role. And it's okay if you want to study for, in my case, project management, data analytics. I recently earned my clinical documentation integrity practitioner certification. Earning my certified risk adjustment coder certification. I have no intention of coding, and I want that to be clear. I achieved that goal as far as having my risk adjustment certification because I wanted to demonstrate that I was very passionate not only about this area of healthcare and quality care, but I also wanted to look at that business piece, looking at how the diagnosis translates into dollars, and that billing part and that revenue cycle management and revenue integrity. All of that these are all areas that I'm interested in. And again, there's nothing wrong with you being a nurse and being interested in that. That doesn't make you some weird unicorn of a nurse that someone asks you, well, I'm a nurse, but I also do. No, I'm a nurse. I'm a nurse. I'm a writer. I'm a nurse informaticist. You can keep going on and on, right?
Right.
I'm a coder. I'm a clinical documentation and integrity practitioner. I'm an HIM professional. You can say all of that and still say I'm a nurse. And that doesn't take away from you being a nurse. And I'll be honest with you, it took me some time to get there.
Yeah.
When I first started to think about, and I can't say exactly when, because it probably was a lot earlier than maybe I even like to admit, because it could have been within my first year or so. It could have been when I was in nursing school, when I realized I want to do some great things in this profession, but I don't know if I fit, because what is cut out here in this profession doesn't seem like it has space for a creative person like myself. It doesn't have space for innovation. It doesn't have space for problem solving. In my mind, early on when I became a nurse, I thought problem solving happened in the C-suite, and it happened with the medical doctors, but I wasn't thinking about nurses as solving problems, if I can be honest.
Yeah.
I wasn't. And, I thought maybe nurses will do a little quick workaround if there's some equipment not working on the unit. But even something like that, I wasn't thinking about that as being innovative. Right. I just thought that as like, well, you patch something here, you tape something there, and it works a little bit. And, that's not solving a problem. Now, granted, it's not solving a problem, like a sustainable long-term problem where you're putting tape on something. But the fact that you worked something out and did something different, and you wind up still having the end result of whatever treatment still being administered, it shows that nurse is thinking out of the box. Okay, well, this is just a means to end. What are some things that we can put in place so we can have this be a true alternative and something sustainable and long-term that we can rely on, as another option. So again, I want to ask you now about We Rekrut Solutions. I love the fact that solutions is in there, because for me, I feel like now the job market is looking so different for a lot of individuals who are in a transition. One thing, if you want to work a traditional nursing role at the bedside, I don't think you have too much problems there. But we tend to, you and I, we tend to focus on that transition. So right now, if nurses are interested in transitioning, I would say the landscape, depending on what you're interested in transitioning to, the landscape is a little, let's just say it's not as friendly as it was last year. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that, where the economy is. So therefore, you really have to make sure that your resume really stands out. You want to make sure that you have the right keywords in your resume. You also want to make sure that you don't have a resume filled with a bunch of jargon that doesn't really translate in those ATS systems, or even for just recruiters who are reading it, or hiring managers that have to actually, review your resume. They don't have a lot of time to look at it. So getting to those keywords early in at the, early part of your resume is really important. And knowing how you need to write that resume, having your skills and having your most relevant work at the top is, to me, I feel like the best way to kind of show that you are a good fit for whatever role you're applying for, versus having education at the top, because it's like, okay, well, who cares about all those degrees you have? Can you do, what are some things you've been able to do, right? So I want to ask you about We Rekrut Solutions. Tell me, what have you been doing now? And also with that, I want you to also discuss your writing more as well. So I don't know if you can, which one you want to go with first, but I want to learn more about We Rekrut Solutions and what you are doing as far as where we can find your articles that you write.
Yeah, sure. So We Rekrut Solutions was really a combination of me trying to find a solution to this ongoing chronic, I guess you can call it a career journey, but it's also somewhat of a purpose journey too. We Rekrut Solutions covers both my recruiting services and the writing that I do. So it is a direct hire placement agency. Direct hire is different from staffing. So when you're working with a staffing agency, typically nurses are owned by that staffing agency and they are contracted out to different facilities, but the nurses receive their pension from that staffing agency. We Rekrut Solutions does direct hire in that we simply source, we vet, we interview, we choose candidates that may be the best fit for hiring employers, and hiring employers bring those persons on as a full-time employee or to enter a role for a specific period of time that employer is looking for that nurse. So that the pay structure and all that works a bit differently, but essentially the nurses in place are employers of the facility as that is looked, and we simply are assisting in that. I started off this agency really focusing on gaining company and company clientele, and worked with a majority of home health agencies. And that involved, looking for nursing or nursing staff in order to fulfill the needs of the home health agencies, which has been great. I've enjoyed the relationships that I've created in doing that. However, I know that the change that I want to make essentially lies with nurses who kind of had similar struggles that, I've had. And so at this point, my process is really focused on building relationships with nurses, whether that's through just meeting them, a network in general, or someone who's connecting with me through the content that I've online, whether that's on YouTube, TikTok, one of the video platforms, or through my content. And our connection starts with just learning about who they are and probably assisting with their resume based on the transition that. But I do like to stay in contact, of course. Part of having a recruiting agency is building relationships. And so I hope that I continue to build and maintain professional relationships with people as they see me actively pursue my own journey as a nursepreneur recruiter. I think it's important to kind of express some of what I've experienced and showed through my writing and through my own form of expression, so that people can get a really real feel of how it is possible for them to connect, who they are, and the skills that they have throughout their journey, whether that's early in their career or later in their career. I would consider myself later in my career. I'm like 11 years now. That might not be considered later for some other people. That's really a subjective term. However, I do hope that I would have figured it out earlier. And when I say out, I mean the nurse branding and how to tie in all that I have to offer based on all that I've learned in nursing school / the corporate environment to really make a purposeful change in the way that I'd like in the healthcare space and / otherwise. So my writing found on LinkedIn, and there are younger nurses that have connected with me through LinkedIn. I hope to be able to attract more nurses that aren't even aware. There was something I posted online the other day about, and one nurse commented, said, "I have no idea what LinkedIn is. Can you tell me more about it?" And so I was kind of shocked about that, but I'm not gonna lie. My dad used to talk about LinkedIn, and I would think to myself, man, it must be a platform for old people, right? But it's not. It's essentially a social networking platform for the corporate world. And the nurses that want to be away from the bedside or out of the hospital need to be on the social media platform for the world. And that's kind of what we're all about. And so I hope that gives sort of a clear under We Rekrut Solutions.
That's beautiful. And so as we are closing out on this chat, I want to thank you for setting aside time to actually, chat with me. This is not our first, this is not even our second, this is not even our third chat.
Right.
Because I think we both get it. I think we both recognize that, through our own experiences, that we kind of had to create these platforms. We had to create these channels, and we had to create these solutions. That's why I love the name of your company, because I feel like it's a solution that we really need to have in place for nurses. I think it helps with retention, helps keep nurses within the profession, and it really helps nurses to tap into those opportunities. I can't stress it enough. I probably said it so many times already, but just not being able to call a thing is so detrimental for nurses, because there's so many things that nurses bring to the table. But if you don't know that's what you're doing, you don't call it that. And if you don't call it that, it's not on your resume. And if it's not on your resume, you can't speak to it. And when you see a job offering where you think, oh, this is something I would love to do in the future, you're not making that connection. If the future is even next week, you're like, I'm ready to move from the current place I'm at. I'm ready for my next step, the next phase of my nursing career. And you don't even know the next step you need to take, and so how do I really point myself in the right direction? And so these solutions, We Rekrut Solutions and advanced clinical documentation for nurses, our commitment is really to nurses who want to transition. With your background, you can really help nurses to really think about innovation and think about technology and think about, EHR systems design, looking at the data that we put inside of these systems in each patient encounter. On my side, I'm looking more so at that provider documentation, but also looking at nurses documentation and promoting quality documentation, and, not just quality, but the integrity of that documentation. Oftentimes nurses we're collecting so much information in patient encounter, we don't even think about, okay, what about the other people who have to also read this? Is it important for me to include these specific details so it can be easily abstracted for, other purposes, especially when we're thinking about things like HEDIS? I can't tell you how many charts I've reviewed, and just in reviewing the charts, I'm like, wow, this was a great opportunity, especially during those annual wellness visits. Wow, this is a great opportunity to capture all of this, data for, care for older adults. So this is like looking at pain, looking at medication review, looking at functional status assessment. These are things that anyone who's 66 and above, the NCQA is hoping that this is captured in the documentation. And I see so many annual wellness visits and this information is not there. So somewhere between the provider, the physician, the nurse, it just wasn't collected, and for a whole entire year, we don't have any proof that anybody looked at this patient's functional assessment, unless they had some kind of fall. And by that time, you're not looking at it for function. You're looking at it because you're trying to find out if the person can still walk with this fracture, and it doesn't work for quality reasons, So it's important for us to be able to challenge, our boundaries, and also be able to tap into our better selves by really connecting with the resources that we have. It doesn't always look like getting another certification. Sometimes it's really just about connecting with the right folks, connecting with the right resources. Your contact information will be on the description of this video. Please reach out to We Rekrut Solutions if you're interested in pivoting and you really need to kind of brainstorm with someone to help you with that. We Rekrut Solutions is here for that. And I will be leaving your information, and I'm encouraging anyone who's, again, interested in transitioning, reach out. There's no need for you to be in the wilderness any longer when you have real solutions, especially those nurses who are interested in transitioning away from traditional nursing roles. And I think I want to get away from saying these are not traditional nursing roles, but I don't think I'm ready yet. But I think we're getting closer that we can stop using that phrase, and we can start looking at that as this is all nursing. Like, this is traditional. Like, this is so informatics is something that has gone as far back as before the 60s, right? I think we can leave it. We can stop saying it's non-traditional, but unfortunately, that's the burden that nurses have to carry. That the profession has been kind of cut out to be about bedpans and about administering medications and living, walking up and down the halls of the hospital or nursing home. And so once a nurse says, "Oh, I don't see patients," you have to be reassured, like, are you okay? Or are you thinking about leaving nursing? I'll say this before I go. I remember one time I was talking with a friend of mine, and when I described to her what, I was doing now, I'm like, I transitioned to HIM. I'm more looking at, providers documentation, chart reviews, and things like that. And she said to me, "Oh, so you're not a nurse anymore?" I'm like, "No, I'm a nurse."
Oh my God.
I said, "No, I'm a nurse. I'm a nurse." Oh, and she said it so many times that I felt like it just couldn't click for her. So, I like to use these opportunities to like reaffirm that, like, I'm a nurse. I am a clinical documentation and integrity practitioner. I am also a clinical quality analyst. I'm also a certified risk adjustment coder. I'm an educational consultant. I'm an educator. I love teaching, and I'm a nurse.
We want to hear from you. Schedule a free consultation or send us an email at advancednurses@acd4n.com or visit our websites www.advancednurses.info or www.acd4n.com.